ESPN releases their future rankings. Are the Hornets moving up or moving down? I'll tell you one thing they're doing. They're reducing their roster instead of adding to it. And I issue a rare apology. That's all coming up today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Hornets. I am Doug Branson. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Typically, I am joined by the great Walker Mail of Wes and Walker on your radio, WFNZ. He's got the day off today. And I will have the day off tomorrow, so Walker will be with you tomorrow telling you all about the things he heard or allegedly, hypothetically, maybe he heard at the coaches' luncheon with head coach Charles Lee, as the Hornets we're doing the little steps that we have to do to get to the regular season when we actually see real live basketball that matters. You have the coaches' luncheon, then you've got media day, then you've got training camp, then you've got preseason in the middle of all of that, and then finally, glorious regular season basketball. I've got a lot to get into in this show. I've got a stacked show here. I want to talk about ESPN future rankings. That's coming up. We actually have some news. Walker said, hey, you got to do the show solo. I'll do it on Friday. I said, perfect, because we actually have news to talk about. So, and that is that the Hornets have made a cut to their roster. I'll get into that in just a second as well. But first, I have to do some cleanup, okay? As soon as we did the show, the last show that we did, everyone was all up in the mentions immediately because you're a bunch of sickos, and I respect that. And the sickos were saying, hey, when you pulled up to the rotation station, you left someone behind. That's Antonio Reeves. I forgot to put Antonio Reeves as the two-way player that replaced Damian Ball on the rotation station. So from myself, I'm going to blame Walker too. He didn't catch it. I think it's mostly on him. You know what I mean? We're supposed to have each other's back. Where were you on that one, Walker? Come on. I mean, I have a baby. He doesn't even have a baby. He's got a bunch of dogs, but those don't count. I have a baby. You know, I just started a new job. By the way, Yahoo Sports Daily. Check that show out. Caroline Fitton, Jason Fitz. I'm somewhere in the background making things happen with a great team of people behind the scenes there. So check that out, Yahoo Sports Daily, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the Yahoo Sports Network. Okay, so I'm sorry to Antonio, his family, his friends. I apologize. I've rectified it. You are on the spreadsheet now, Antonio. Three-point shooting specialist from the New Orleans Pelicans, was a second-round pick. The Hornets deciding to give him a shot. And an exciting player, too. I mean, I think there is some minor 3-and-D potential with Antonio, less on the D, more on the 3. But, yeah, I mean, I think he's just in a long line of players that they brought into the organization that when you go and look them up, one of the things that coaches and players say about them, guy that digs, guy that plays hard, does the right things. So I think we'll expect to see the same thing from Antonio as he joins the Charlotte Hornets. So that was an ad that they made, a two-way ad, not an actual roster ad, but a two-way ad that they made. But we've got some roster reductions to talk about. The Hornets officially waiving DaQuan Jeffries, who was acquired in that trade that facilitated the Cat to New York and that big deal. Julius Randle goes to Minnesota. And there are a lot of picks exchanged, but essentially the Hornets served as the absorber of contracts to make the deal happen for New York, and Jeffries was one of the players that came over in that deal, and it was actually a first. The Hornets were the first team to take advantage of being able to move contracts into the room exception, which was a little CBA wrinkle in the last negotiations. So the Hornets did that, and they were able to bring back 3 second-round picks essentially for free. And Jeffries, I think, did some admirable work servicing a Hornets team that was depleted in his time here. And so he got plenty of opportunities to get out there. Didn't always make, I think, enough shots to really justify keeping him long-term and guaranteeing the $2.7 million he was owed. But they could have kept him on the unguaranteed deal until January. But I think this release was more of a reflection of a decision that really was going to be made and did not need to be moved further, because I think they will want to get a look at 4 rookies that they've drafted, and some of those rookies playing positions like Liam McNeely. I mean, they're going to look at Liam McNeely vastly more than they would have DaQuan Jeffries. And you've got Antonio Reeves too, who I just mentioned. Like, they've got players that they can take a look at in training camp. And Jeffries, a veteran, I think he'll get picked up by somebody at some point to be a deep roster player. And the world keeps on spinning for the Charlotte Hornets, who still have 2 decisions to make on their roster. And I think it still surrounds, to sort of recap if you missed that episode. Now that the roster is at 20, but 3 of those are 2-ways. So they could always swap out a 2-way. They can't really move any of those rostered players into a 2-way, I don't think, because a lot of these players are veterans. That really wouldn't work out. But they could send Drew Peterson or Antonio Reeves off and bring in someone else. The true decision is it time to abandon the Nick Smith Jr. project? And do you either waive Spencer Dinwiddie, waive Pat Connaughton, or swing some kind of 2-for-1 trade that allows you maybe to continue the Nick Smith Jr. experience for 1 year until you move on? But even still, no, they'd still have to make, so you really have to do a 3-for-1 at that point. I'm not even sure that maybe if you did want to move Josh Green in concert with some of those players, but that would be a significant move before the season. And I just don't see that happening. I think more than likely it's going to be Nick Smith Jr. released and then making a call, maybe a smaller trade involving Pat Connaughton, who has an expiring deal, and keeping Spencer Dinwiddie, or just seeing what Spencer Dinwiddie has left in the tank when you get him into training camp, and then making a call whether to move on from him or not. Because I think of the players, of the Pat Connaughton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Nick Smith Jr. group, I think probably Connaughton has the most left to actually contribute, just in consistent shooting, championship experience. Like, I just think Pat Connaughton, probably of those 3, would be a player worth keeping. Particularly, I mean, you're pretty stacked at point guard. You could use a little bit of off-ball scoring that Pat Connaughton can give you. And, I mean, none of those players are like, I mean, Dinwiddie's a bigger guy, but I don't think any of them are going to make much money on the defensive end. So you're really making a choice about what kind of consistency they could bring on the offensive end, and I think Pat more than fits that bill. So that's where the roster stands as of now. But what about the future? As we look into the years ahead for the Charlotte Hornets, how's this thing shaking out money-wise, management-wise? Well, ESPN has had their say. Bobby Marks specifically writing a little blurb about the Hornets' future, and ESPN ranking all 30 NBA teams according to their future prospects. I'll tell you where the Hornets land, where they landed last year, and where they could land in the future rankings. That's all coming up on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people, they can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth. I can barely name one of them. Whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, when you don't have the full picture, here's what happens. You end up leaving money on the table. And if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. You don't want to leave money on the table. You want to put it in your wallet. That's why Monarch Money exists. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface that you can use on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you, because Monarch does the heavy lifting. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So, don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. One other great thing about Monarch Money is it's great if you and your partner are trying to get all on the same page, because you don't have to have all of these crazy spreadsheets flying around and confusing you and missing bills and all this other stuff that just ends up creating arguments. No, just use Monarch Money. You both have access to the app. You can see what's going on, and it saves you from getting into a fight. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, welcome back to Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Locked On wants to hear from you, by the way. We put a survey together to learn more about you and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, particularly me forgetting about Antonio Reeves. If you want to throw that in there, that's fine. You can answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Okay, let's get into some NBA future, not only rankings, these are future power rankings from the ESPN NBA insiders. And I'm just going to, I don't want to tease you anymore. I've already teased you enough. You are fully teased at this point. I'm just going to tell you that the Charlotte Hornets are ranked 23 in the ESPN Future Power Rankings. 23, the number of their former owner, majority owner, Michael Jordan. Their previous ranking was 26, so they've moved up 3 spots. And I'll tell you all of the category rankings in just a second, but let me read what Bobby Marks has to say here. Ranking in FPRs, I guess that stands for Fantasy Power Rankings, Future Power Rankings, bottom 10 does not mean the Hornets are stuck in neutral. Charlotte is focusing on its 5 players on rookie contracts, that's Brandon Miller, Con Knippel, Tijon Salon, Nick Smith Jr., and Leah McNeely, while also accumulating draft assets and having financial flexibility. The Hornets have 24 draft picks in the next 7 years, including 11 first, and could have cap space in the next 2 off seasons. As a result, Charlotte ranks in the top 10 in both draft and money. So here are the categories and the ranks. The players are ranked 25th. The money is ranked top 10, 7th. The draft is ranked top 5, 4th. Market, 21st. Management, 22nd. What do I think about this ranking? 23rd. I think it's probably a little low, but I know what it's based on. It's based on this player ranking at 25, and it's based on LaMelo Ball being hurt and not realizing a multiple all-star campaigns. Part of that's on the media. That's not even on him being hurt, more than the media hurting him last season. It's also about Brandon Miller being hurt and not being able to fully realize, like, what do they have talent-wise? It's a question that I don't even know the coaches have a great answer, that the front office even has a great answer for, because so many people have been playing hurt or not playing at all. And I think it's even tougher for pundits to answer who aren't plugged into the team day in and day out. So being ranked in the bottom 5 essentially in players' rankings is dragging this ranking down. So you could look at 23 and be disappointed, but I actually look at 23 and I have a lot of hope, even more hope than Bobby Marks does, because I think, man, if you get one all-star level season, healthy season from LaMelo Ball, and he turns around the narrative on him, and then you get a full season of Brandon Miller, and he starts to realize the hype that people are already on in terms of Brandon Miller, and then you get a decent Con Knippel season, all of a sudden I think that player ranking goes up. But the important thing is that draft top 5, the Charlotte Hornets top 5 in draft, and I guess that both accounts for the future prospects of the draft picks that they've already made in Brandon Miller, Knippel, Salon, McNeely, but also it takes into account the number of draft picks that they've acquired. But just like for those that have been with the program, both the Charlotte Hornets program and this program, for a long time, I just want you to just sit back in your chair and really absorb the idea that ESPN would look at the Charlotte Hornets as an organization and say, that's a top 5 drafting team. And I mean, we are only a couple of years into the Jeff Peterson experience. All of these draft picks that he's accumulated, it's like you've accumulated all those and it makes your draft ranking rise. But once he employs those draft picks, whether it be actually drafting players because I think he's already started to prove out. Tijon Salon has to come along. I think that's a big sort of like what if. But Brandon Miller obviously wasn't a Peterson pick. It was more of a Jordan coming in with a last little gift for the Charlotte Hornets in terms of, although that's a pretty nasty gift to be like, hey, I've burdened you as an organization with all of these other decisions I made in terms of involving myself in the draft. So just to make it up, right before I leave, here's a gold watch. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that gift, but I guess thanks for the gold watch. But now he has all of these draft assets. What happens to the other rankings if Jeff Peterson is as competent as we're all confident that he is? What happens to those other rankings? You have to think the player ranking goes up if you can employ 3 or 4 of those first-round picks that you've got in the kitty and bring in an all-star or fringe all-star level player to complement LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. That player ranking has to go up. All the future rankings and Bobby Marks and Tim Bontemps and Kevin Peltons of the world, all they need from the Charlotte Hornets is for them to just rise up above the Vegas Insider, win-loss rankings this season. Just give these people something to write positively about for the Charlotte Hornets instead of another 19-win season. Market's not going to change. 21 market, that, if I looked over the history of the power rankings, I'm sure that's pretty locked in terms of market. But I'll tell you, coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast, I will tell you it's not the most important number. Draft, not the most important number. Money, not the most important number. It was top 10 as well. Maybe we get into a little bit of that. Not the most important number. Players, surprisingly, not the most important number. What's the most important number? It's the one I haven't said yet. It's coming up on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business like I do, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Why do we keep leaving money on the table? That's not where the money goes. It goes in your pocket. Think about the last time you had an urgent need. Maybe you needed a plumber or some other kind of service provider. If the first person did not answer, did you wait? I know I don't. When I'm looking for a handyman, if I call, you don't answer, next. I just another Google search away, next. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app that's on your phone or your computer. Open Phone lets you manage your business calls and texts from a single app, and the shared inbox feature, super game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. They've got an AI agent that handles after-hours calls. You can't always be on the phone. Come on. Use the robots, answers common questions, and captures leads so that you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, guess what? Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, last segment here on Locked On Hornets. A little bit more on these future rankings. I may have time for a Sicko Satchel question. Let's see what we do here. The most important number in these future rankings, it's the one I haven't. The one I said at the beginning, but then disregarded until this moment. And that's management moving up to 22. And I think it could be higher, but I think, again, it's sort of the same thing with the players. It's a wait and see sort of thing. It's not we don't have confidence in you. It's we need to see you do something, Jeff Peterson, with all of those draft picks that you acquired, with some of these draft picks that you've already made. We have to see some of them come into fruition. But we see what you're doing with the books. That's why this ranking has them top 10, number 7, because even though you have a max level player in LaMelo Ball, the rest of your roster is super flexible, including the Miles Bridges deal. And again, some of that you have to say, all right, thank you, Mitch Kupchak. There were a couple of these things that came through, like they didn't feel the responsibility to cede to all of the pretty harsh demands that the Miles Bridges camp wanted before he took the qualifying offer. Like that could have been a disaster contractually, but it wasn't. Instead, you get a deal done that is extremely movable. There are a lot of movable deals. In fact, a lot of the players that have been acquired, the veteran players that we've been talking about, like the Pat Connaughtons of the world, those are deals that can be moved now, or if Pat Connaughton hits and is, steps in. Look, players get injured. Like, even if Pat Connaughton doesn't have a significant role at the beginning of the season, no fan base, with the exception of maybe the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans, no fan base knows the value of depth more than the Charlotte Hornets. The difference is the Grizzlies had depth. The Hornets have not, and that's why they've won 19 games. So, you have to value Pat Connaughton on this team now and know that he will get a shot and could be valuable to a playoff team down the line that needs a little bit of extra shooting. So I think the 22nd ranking, first of all, if you go back and look at future rankings of the past, this would be a category that was like an easy 28, 29, 30 for pundits, because there was a lot of truth to it. And added on top of that, there was the perception of Michael Jordan that probably worked itself into reality by the end of his Hornets tenure, but the perception of Michael Jordan as a bad owner that for many years we tried to fight against and say, well, this, that, that. But then by the end of his tenure, it was like, okay, they had a point. So, I mean, I don't have the previous year's rankings pulled up, but I have to imagine this was a 5 or 6 or 7 rank jump for the Charlotte Hornets moving into the 22nd spot. And I'm just telling you, like, that one, management and players, it's just ready to jump. And I will say, too, I think management is sort of the safer bet to jump, because players, look, if LaMelo Ball gets hurt again, they're going to be at a talent deficit. There's just no way around it. There's no, other than Jeff Peterson pulling off some moves of a lifetime, which, that's an outlier possibility. But I think the player ranking is going to be pretty set in stone for at least a year or two if LaMelo Ball gets hurt again. But if he doesn't, that thing's primed to move up. And I think too, if you look at the future rankings, there are teams that are primed to move down. Milwaukee Bucks, they're sitting at 21st right now. The previous ranking was 15th. If Giannis moves on, they're cratering. So that's one spot. Portland Trailblazers, they've moved up from 30 to 22 because they've done a lot of retooling of their roster. They bet low on Denny Avdia. There's another example of like just talent scouting going, hey, Denny Avdia, a guy that was in a bad situation he's been in a couple of bad situations, but they plucked him out and said, no, you're a good player. You're just in a weird situation. We're going to maximize you. The Hornets could do that. They don't have to get like a name brand player. You could go out and use a draft pick or 2 draft picks to go and find that sort of opportunity. So I don't know. Portland, I think, is probably poised to move up. 19, the Philadelphia 76ers, they've gone from 4 to 19. And again, same sort of situation. If Embiid misses significant amounts of time, if Paul George does, they're going all the way down. And particularly if they move on from all of those players, even though they have some young core pieces too. I just think they've got players ranked 19. And again, Embiid, the idea of Embiid and the idea of Paul George are, holding that thing up. That's it. But money's 23rd because of the contract sizes. Draft 14 because they don't draft high very often. 14, although that's maybe 14 is McCain. Management 16. Detroit, I think, will keep moving up. Memphis will keep moving up. Although they moved down. But Detroit went from 29 to 18. Again, that's the power of the playoffs too, by the way. If the Hornets beat back into the play-in and then suddenly get in the playoffs, well, perception. I mean, if you think like that team's a playoff team, you're going to say their future prospects are good. And then honestly, like, I'm sure I could pluck out a few top 10 teams and go, yeah, their future prospects look great right now. But if one or, they've also have 1 or 2 time bombs that if they go off, then all of a sudden they could rocket down in the same way that Philadelphia did from 4 to 19. They were ranked 4 last season because everybody looked at Joel Embiid and said, gotta be healthy, right? Everybody looked at Paul George and said, yes, that's the kind of player that needs to be next to Embiid. What happens? Not only was Paul George not healthy, not only was Embiid, you had the drama with Embiid, you had the health with Embiid, but then those players didn't even mesh. And that's really the challenge. The challenge for Jeff Peterson is not go out and find a big name for the Charlotte Hornets. It's go and find the right player, Figure out what you got in LaMelo Ball and if he can stay healthy, and then go find the right player for him and Brandon Miller. Not the biggest name. Dallas Mavericks, they moved down to 16 from 5. But I think if Cooper Flag works out, they'll move up. Boston moves down to 13, but again, they'll ping pong back up. What was another team that I looked at? Orlando Magic at 7. But see, that's Orlando Magic. Again, that's sort of the idea is like they pushed all their chips in on Paolo and Franz. And if it works out, they'll be top 5 for the next 5 to 7 years. But if it doesn't work out, then they're heading back for the bottom. Because the only way you can sustainably stay in the top 5 or 10 is superstars. Paolo is not a superstar yet. Franz is not a superstar yet. If one of them blossoms into a superstar and they win playoff series and they get to a finals, then they'll stay in the top 5 or top 10. That's the only way you can do it. The Hornets could make the playoffs the next 2 years, work themselves into a top 10 or a top 10. But if Brandon Miller is a superstar, eventually it's gonna rocket back down. So that's it. That's the future rankings. Hornets 23rd. I like it. I like this ranking. I think it's a fair ranking based on everything we've seen. Bobby Marks, I think a fair evaluation of the Charlotte Hornets, saying, hey, they're not stuck in neutral. I don't know what gear they would be in. I mean, they're not in drive. Drive is you just traded. It's the Orlando Magic. Like you got 2 burgeoning stars or stars already, 2 burgeoning superstars, and you're making moves for Desmond Bane. That's drive. They're not in park. No, that's it. No, they are in park. That's it. They're in park, and it's like, all right, where are they going to go next? Are they going to go in drive? Are they going to go in reverse? Are they going to make a 3-point turn? Are they going to try to parallel park this thing? I don't know. I've extended this analogy as far as I can. But they're in park right now, and we're waiting to see what direction they want to take this thing and how fast they want to go. Do they want to continue to be patient for the next 5 years, or do they want to say, all right, enough's enough. We've renovated Spectrum Center. We've put in all these new seats. Now it's time to fill them up. Let's go get player X. I'm excited. It's weird to be excited about a 23rd future power ranking, but I think you look at some of these numbers and I think they're just ready to rocket if certain things go right. But that's the hope. That's why I'm a sicko. That's why you're a sicko. Thank you for watching Locked On Hornets. Walker Mail is going to be on here solo tomorrow telling you everything that he hypothetically heard at the coach's luncheon. Give you all the insight you need to get you into the weekend. We are dangerously close to having actual basketball to talk about. But before then, we are going to finish Who Wore It Best so that you know every single player that wore every single number for the Charlotte Hornets best. Until then, I'm Doug for Walker saying go Hornets, go America. Let's swarm Charlotte. See you soon.